Hello, Wes.
Oh, hey, Phil.
How are you, babe?
Like, where do I look?
At me.
Oh, yes. That never gets old.
How are you, babe?
I'm doing great.
Good.
It's great to be back in the studio with you here at Spread the Positive.
Yes. Thank you,
Murfreesboro,
Trent,
Tennessee.
for having us. We really appreciate you. We've just had a fabulous evening.
Woo. One of the most electrifying nights I've been at the Ryman Auditorium, downtown Nashville. Mother Church Country Music, built in 1892.
Definitely the best place to hear live music.
Yeah. Cedric the Entertainer did his last stand-up special there.
Really?
Cedric, yeah. So anyway, anything's there. Everything's there.
We, I guess it was a few nights ago, Leslie Jordan had a show and invited some friends. I haven't laughed that hard. It was laughter. There was some tears. It was just such a fantastic evening.
He's brilliant. His comedic timing is wonderful. And I'll tell you, it was called Leslie Jordan and Friends.
Right.
He needs to take that show on the road.
Oh,
I'll tell you.
Without question.
So he come out and there were times where he was talking to the crowd. And he forgets to have the microphone. He's like, oh, shit, y'all, you know, and just epic. Fancy Haygood was there. Who
I have never heard him sing live. I was blown away.
By him. Brothers Osborne came out. That was electrifying. In the audience, we saw Levi Hummins has that Pay For It song. Levi, shout out to him. And one of my favorites. Sarah Evans was sitting like right in front of us,
and
I
gorgeous red coat.
Oh my God, I just wanted to hug her, and that would have been weird.
I
would have been arrested.
Right? Yeah, I wanted to go say something to her, but I was like, she has no idea who I am. But I'm obsessed with her.
She's like the 2 bottles deep guy, right?
Right.
But speaking of Sarah Evans, why are we here today?
So I am so excited about this episode. This is someone that I've been talking with her for a few months now, ever since the documentary Invisible came out. And we finally got to a position where we could sit down and have a great conversation with her. I would like to introduce her.
Please do.
Yes, her name is Bonnie Baker. She is a multi-platinum, Grammy-nominated, Nashville-based songwriter. She's a publisher, an educator. She's worked in the music business for over 20 years and sold over 10 million albums.
Yeah, we're up to like 10 streams.
Right. So she's blown us away on that one. She's written songs for Reba McEntire, Sarah Evans, Hunter Hayes, who I love, Chad Brock, Rachel Platten, just to name a few. She's also featured in the award-winning documentary Invisible. Wes and I have talked about this many times. That's the documentary which tells the story of a group of lesbian women and one trans man who wrote just amazing country songs, but were not out of the closet. So without further ado, I would love to welcome to the virtual 2 Bottles Deep studio, Bonnie Baker.
Crowd goes wild.
Bonnie.
Guys, thank you. I'm good.
Thank you so much. Before we get started, for doing this. I know you're busy. You're selling millions of albums. We just appreciate your time so much. So thank you for doing this.
Awesome.
Well, thank you for having me. I just can't think of a place I'd rather be on a kind of gray, rainy Saturday morning than sitting right here.
What else are you going to do? I'll talk to these guys. Right. It's raining out. I'm just kidding.
I can't go outside. It's raining.
Right. Well, before we get to how fabulous you are, let's talk about kind of how you got there. Give us a little backstory about your childhood, where you grew up, kind of how you got into music and start there.
Well, seriously, thanks for having me today. I love the conversations you guys are having because I feel like you're not afraid of the hard subjects, and that's refreshing, in today's world, that we can hold different views and still sit in the same room and talk and connect and communicate. So I grew up in a small little town in East Texas. My father was a minister. My mom was a stay-at-home mom most of my life. I was an only child for the first 8 years, and then some siblings started showing up. And and I say that because 2 of my siblings are kind of adopted and brought into the family a little bit differently. And then I have a little sister that's 14 years younger than me. That was my mom carried her as well. So very small town, very conservative, very quiet. I didn't get to listen to the radio. We didn't have a television in our house until I was 8. And so there is a lot of references in the film that talk about the kind of I'm going to say religious aspect of childhood, and the childhood that I am acquainted with was more fear-based, more rule-driven, more punishment, for things you did wrong. And there were books that I wasn't allowed to read in the library. The music I could listen to was Christian music. And so I find it interesting that I spent a lot of time in my room with headphones on because I could sneak music in that wasn't approved if I used headphones.
Yeah.
So as a grown-up, all these years later, I'm still in a room working on music with headphones on. Wow. So I find that to be interesting that our childhoods really do mold us and make us into the humans that we are. I loved music. I loved Elton John. I loved Queen. Those big melodies, those passionate performances, just, Eagles, Linda Ronstadt was absolutely one of my favorites. And this morning I was thinking about Have You Never Been Mellow, Olivia Newton-John. I don't know if I'm dating myself here, but I adored her. Anne Murray out of Canada.
Canada.
Oh my God. Loved Anne Murray. So Townes Van Zandt, Chris Christopherson were my two songwriting. And I would start noticing on these liner notes when I could get my hands on a copy of an album, I would notice written by, and that's kind of when I started being able to sneak in my teenage years, sneak some albums and keep them under my bed, tucked up under the mattress so that nobody could find them. And, started sorting through the liner notes. And I was like, oh my gosh, somebody wrote these songs. So about 15, I'd been playing the piano since about 5. I started taking piano lessons, and we lived right next to the church. So I could walk over to the church every day, shut the door even at 5 and 6 and 7 and be able to play without someone interrupting me. And so I started noticing that there were people writing songs on these albums that were not the artist. And so around 15 years old, I started playing around with that, coming up with melodies or coming up with ideas or thoughts. And, one of my first songs that I wrote was Just a Piece of Paper. And some of the first verse lyrics, I don't guess presidents in my horoscope, because all I've got are little lines and 3 small holes. And all I do all day is find a spot to lay, because after all, I'm just a piece of paper. So that was my first foray into the writing world. Went to college, got a degree in English, started my master's in English fiction, studied Handmaid's Tale was one of the books that I studied in my master's program. And
where were you in college, Bonnie?
So I went to Mary Hardin Baylor, which is the University of Mary Hardin Baylor, which is in Belton, Texas. Mm-hmm. It's like the female version of Baylor. It was a nursing school. It's kind of a small, private, very conservative school in Belton, Texas, which is north of Austin. Started my master's degree in San Marcos. And and so did not finish my master's, but that was the road I was on, was a degree in English, teaching English, fiction writing. I thought I wanted to be a novelist. I thought I wanted to write books. And so that was kind of where I was pointed. Very unhappy late teens. I moved out of my house when I was 17, finished high school living with one of my teachers, believe it or not. And college, wrap that up in, I never had a drink of alcohol until after I was 21 years old. And while I suggest that our teens don't drink, the thing for me was I had never learned to deal with, the innermost things happening in my heart, which was I felt constantly told, no, here are the rules. You suffer punishment if you break the rules. And so then you become a 21-year-old living in Austin, Texas, and never had a drink of alcohol. And then all of a sudden it's like,
hello, 6th Street.
Oh my God.
Right.
So my middle sister took me to 6th Street after I was 21, and she's 8 years younger. You do the math. She took me to 6th Street, and the last thing I remember was sitting on the curb of 6th Street, hand in my head in my hands, like, oh my God, what is happening?
And there are a few times. Do you remember Leslie? Were you there with Leslie? He was a homeless, kind of like drag queen. Oh. And he ran for mayor, but he came from money. He had a ton of money, and he had a beard, but then he'd wear a bikini. And then he would just ride down the street, and people are like, oh, there goes Leslie. And you knew the tourist because they were like, what is that? We're like, oh, that's Leslie. You didn't have to look.
He's got to be the mayor.
He was he ran for mayor like 8 times. It was amazing.
That's hilarious. I love it.
I lived there from 08 to 14 and came out in Austin. So 4th Street was my drag over there. It was fun.
Yeah, I played a lot of the little area, some of there was a lesbian bar right on 6th, maybe 7th. Played there many like happy hours or evenings, like just guitar vocal, that kind of thing. So yeah, Austin I love the, keep Austin weird. I was like, I don't know that we can not keep it weird because it just is. But yeah, I love Austin. But
the Continental Club on South Congress.
Oh yeah.
There's emos. There's so many great venues. Like here, it's almost like the listening room. Yeah. People respect the writers. They respect the art. And a lot of times too, you talked about you would look for it written by, produced by, and growing up in Central Illinois, not that it's their issue, it was probably mine, but I'm like, oh, it's, Randy Travis, or it's Garth Brooks, or it's Brooks and Dunn. I didn't get into the art of it until I moved here and really went to the listening room. I'm like, that's that guy and that's that girl. And the song Suffragettes are there on Mondays. It's all women. And it's amazing.
Yeah, that's an amazing show. Those guys have done a great job with that. Yeah, I love that. And I do think that there's a part of our audiences that just are not aware that, like with a movie or a television show, there's a room full of writers writing that content. That the De Niro doesn't just show up on set and go, let me lay some wisdom on you. He's got someone that is writing that. And I actually was very intrigued with speech writing, to be honest with you. I believe with all of my heart that great speech writing is something we don't think about. But those politicians that have risen to the highest ranks, with some exceptions, let's be clear.
I have no idea where you're going with that one.
Who was that?
Some people can just vomit by the mouth, and we're like, oh, let's elect him. No names called. But if you look at the history of great politicians and those incredible speeches, I have a double CD set. That's how old it is. A double CD set of the top 50 greatest speeches of all times.
Oh, wow.
And it's like everyone, all the way from Churchill to Margaret Thatcher to Ann Richards, who was like the governor of Texas.
Yeah.
Remember? She's like, bless George, what's his name? Our president, bless George's heart, meaning George Bush. He was born with the silver spoon in his silver foot in his mouth. God, I can't even say it. Jesus. Okay, talk about speech writing, Bob. Anyway, So that always intrigued me. I was intrigued by great fiction. I was intrigued by great songs that were written for other people. I was on my way to get a master's degree. I very quickly, from 21 to I'm going to try to paddle this boat into shore here. The early 20s, went on a major bender. I discovered alcohol. I also discovered a couple of years later, I'd be driving to school to teach my English classes, and I would have a bottle of something sitting in the front seat with me. And so I was like, I am not winning at this life thing. What's going on? What's happening? Went to some therapy, realized I was gay, realized I was not happy, was trying to numb out. So my road to Nashville started in those days when I was like, what would make me happy? What would bring me to my best self? And, as a 23, 24-year-old, you don't have that language yet. Right. So I literally didn't know what I was doing. I loved music of all kind. I didn't think I would do well in LA because I was a little backward and shy. New York was too expensive. London felt like the other side of the world, which it is. But Nashville felt accessible to me. Nashville felt like a place I could make a home. So I visited here, and that's another story for another day maybe. But my first meeting with Renee Bell at MCA Records, she was Tony Brown's assistant for years and years. I'll tell it quickly if that's okay. I came to Nashville for a meeting. I had a few songs on a cassette, nothing demoed, nothing. And a guy in Texas that worked at MCA Records heard me play the show, said, I'll introduce you to Tony Brown and his assistant if you want. So it's like, okay, I'll go to Nashville and meet some people. So I got to my appointment a little early. MCA Records was still in that little bitty house, and Bobby's Idol Hour was right down the street, right? So I was early. So I walked down to Bobby's, pounded a few.
Sounds about right.
Right? I was going to say, name of next album, pounded a few. And then I'll go back to my meeting. And so Renee Bell is a wonderful, kind human being, invites me into her office. I go in there and I sit and if you ever get a chance to see me when I am not sober, I'm very quiet. I speak very hushed and so I'm sitting in this chair and she's like, so, why are you here? And I'm like, I don't know. I don't know.
I can't remember.
I can't remember. So she realized I was just really way in over my head. And so we talked for a little while. She heard my story. And in a minute, she said, do you want to smoke? And I went, I do. So she raised a window in the MCA office and she and I sat there and shared a couple of cigarettes together. And then, my time was up and she was like, do you want to play me any music? And I said, no, because it's not very good. So she was like very kind. And she said, well, do you want to be a songwriter? And I said, I do. And she said, keep writing, just keep writing and come back to see me. So I went back to Texas and spent a little more time and then made my move to Nashville. But it was a long journey. It took a long time for me to feel comfortable moving away from Texas, moving away from family, moving away from everything that felt safe to me. But the beauty of it is, and I try to keep this philosophy now, anytime I'm that uncomfortable, it usually means I'm doing what I'm supposed to do. So anyway, that's my journey to Nashville.
When
many empty bottles.
I hear that. Same. When did you realize you were different or start to think that you may like girls? What age you were?
Yeah, great question. At around 14, 15 years old, I had a boyfriend, Ed Ishmael, and we at 18 went on a ski trip together. We were boyfriend and girlfriend, and never held hands or anything, but we were like really great friends. We went on a ski trip together when I was 18, and it was just he and I, but his friend Kip came to join us. So he and Kip on Thanksgiving Day were in the kitchen cooking, and I was in the living room watching football. And so newsflash, neither one of us knew what that, what any of that meant. And so we stayed boyfriend and girlfriend for, I don't know, 2 or 3, 4 years, right? Never really kissed, never held, nothing, right? We were just like hanging out. And a couple of years later, he called me, he said, "Hey, Bonnie, I have something to tell you." And I went, "Hey, Ed, I have something to tell you." Same girl, same. And so he was like,
Oprah.
I'm gay. And I went, "Okay, I think I'm gay too." So 20-ish, 21-ish is when I, college days, there was definitely someone I was attracted to in college. And on a Christian college campus, that's tricky. My first few years, I was very attracted to straight girls, that whole thing. God, those were some awful years. I think back and I'm like, wow. So yeah, I knew I was different. I loved to read books. I loved to play music. I loved sports. I loved basketball and all those things, but I just didn't fit in with the other girls, who were so boy crazy. And I always just thought I was just very driven, but it was actually because I like girls instead of like boys. And so that's why none of that was really landing for me. So I'm going to say between 18 and 21 is when it kind of came into focus.
Are you still in touch with Ed?
Oh yeah. He's an attorney in Austin, Texas, and a real estate attorney. So yeah,
Ed Ishmael, right? No, I'm just
you would love him. He's just like,
oh, good.
I was in Austin, I don't know, a few years before it was before the pandemic, and met him downtown Austin. We walked to this little underground place and had our breakfast tacos, because I freaking love Austin, Texas.
And the breakfast tacos, you've not had a breakfast taco unless you've been to Torchy's or anywhere in Austin.
Yeah, no, Nashville, would like to think that they understand breakfast tacos, but they do not.
We are getting a Whataburger up here, though. I
did hear that.
Watch
I did hear that. I heard that.
So, Bonnie, question for you. Kind of taking it back a little further. In your childhood, you talked about growing up really strict religious. And I feel like I did the same. I don't know if my memory it's not a negative necessarily. That was just the norm for me.
Right.
Do you remember like in church it actively being talked about, homosexuality? And if so, did you have an opinion on it? Were you because I can remember it being talked about in my church and thinking, I don't know if that's me or not. It could be, but I doubt. You don't want to admit it. So can you talk on that for a minute?
There were moments that the sins were called out, and definitely homosexuality was, you were going to go to hell, just no doubt about it, very well. But you also were going to go to hell if you went to a Methodist church. You were also going to go to hell if you wore pants instead of a skirt. Like, it was, if you cut your hair, if you talked back. There were so many ways to hell. I was like, this place is like very well traveled,
Yeah, I'll see you there.
Everyone's going.
At least we'll know people.
Yeah, if you drank alcohol, if you did any drug, so many things. So I was very immersed in that for most of my life. I didn't think about just the homosexuality piece. I remember one day, one of my really good friends at high school was a black guy. He was the sweetest guy in our school. And so he and I hung out together because he loved basketball. So did I. So he and I would shoot hoops a lot. And he drove me home from school one day, and my father lost his shit. So black people were not allowed in our church.
We're not allowed.
Oh God, no. No, they have their own
that was
church.
Common. Yeah.
Yeah, very common. And I heard my father say one day that Jewish people were going to go to hell if they did not recognize Jesus Christ as the Son of God. And to be honest with you, the homosexuality piece wasn't where I broke. It was at that, because I was like, hang on a second. My black friend, who is the nicest guy in school, he doesn't sexually vandalize other girls. He's like the coolest dude on the planet, and he can't come to church with me. Jewish people are going to hell. Someone who has an issue with alcohol or drugs can't come to our church. Right. They're going to go to hell. All of it started to pile up, and I was like, I don't think there's anyone left. Like,
right. Yeah.
I am in a dead end street. That's how it felt to me. It was like, if all these other people can't come with me to, I don't know, whatever faith or religion represents in our lives, which is a sense of community. It's a sense of wellness. It's a sense of safety. It's a sense of wisdom. Like, you go to church to hear someone help you get through your daily life. Mm-hmm. And those women and men sitting there, very white, very like middle class to upper class, and they're judging everyone else in the world, and yet their lives were awful.
In shambles.
There were dads beating on their kids. There were people cheating on it. You know, you sit there in a church Scandals. And you're like, yeah, all of the stuff going on that nobody's going to talk about because they're in a privileged white position. Honestly, right. It was that language that made me start to go, I don't fit here. Because we judge each other by the content of our hearts and our souls, and not by the color of our skin or if we're gay or not. So I actually started to grow out of that faith more because of other things besides being gay. So then when I realized I was gay, I didn't truly think I was going to go to hell, because I don't believe Jewish people are going to hell. I don't believe black people are going, I didn't believe any of that. I just started to break away from that. So it was kind of a breakout story of like, I don't believe this. And I believe what I'm seeing in today's world was on a very small scale, the same world I grew up in. Like, there are two sets of rules for two different people. There's the chosen, the white, the heterosexual, like, we believe in God and country and guns and Bibles and all of that. And then there's the rest of us. And I saw that warfare start then. It was very small. It was very under the radar. But I think that's why in today's world, I'm not surprised anymore. I feel like that same mentality has grown up, and now we have this full-blown kind of movement of that if you are a certain color and if you are a certain stature in your community, that the law doesn't apply to you, that the rules of morality don't apply to you, that your kids can get away with whatever they want to do. There were two guys that were sons of deacons in our church. They victimized so many people in our community because their dad was a deacon. They never were held accountable. Their mom was the organist in our church, and they got away with everything. And my friend who was Black couldn't come to church with me. So I was like, this doesn't seem right. And I want out of this. I want to get out of it.
So Bonnie, you also mentioned that you moved out of the house. I can't remember what age you said.
17. Yeah. 17. I was.
What was the impetus to move out?
So we moved around a lot. Like I had gone to 11 different schools by the time I was a senior. I was about to start my senior year and had already had to change out of the small school I was in. So this was going to be my 12th school in 12 years. And my parents decided to move again. So I would have had to go to school number 13. So I was about to start my senior year, and I just went to my parents and I said, I can't do this. I cannot move again. And my choir teacher in Nacogdoches, Texas, Barbara Reed, I will never forget her as long as I live, allowed me to live with her and finish my high school year and start college. I think she saw in me that I was trying hard to get into college. I'm the first person in my family to go to college. And in fact, my mom made a comment that Bonnie was a good Christian girl until she went to college. And so she opened her house up to me and allowed me to live there with her, finish out. I was in her music program in school, and allowed me to finish my high school, my senior year, and start college. And so that was, parents were moving again, and they allowed me to do it, which was interesting. But I had a plan. I went to them with a plan. I had a job. I had purchased a car. And I said, my choir teacher is willing to let me live with her so I can finish high school and keep my grades up. And, when you move around a lot and your education is interrupted, there was a lot of interruption of education. So when I started college, I was very far behind. So I had to do a lot of remedial, a lot of extra work. And thankfully, I think that's why I love the teaching profession so much. Literally, teachers saved my life over and over again. So that high school choir teacher was my doorway to move into this other world of, I want to educate myself. I want to learn. I want to grow. I was very curious. I always loved to read and wanted to learn. So she gave me that opportunity.
And you mentioned, and Wes was asking you when you felt you were different. How long after you kind of realized you were different and coming out, how long of a time was that?
Coming out to my parents?
Yeah, to your parents.
18 years ago.
Okay.
I was about to be a parent. And I wrote my parents a letter and came out to them then. All of those years, I just lived a lie. I would go home by myself. If they met someone that I was dating, then it was just a friend. 18 years ago is when I came out to my parents in a letter. I wasn't even brave enough to do it in person.
Yeah. How was the receiving end of that?
Well, no, they did not. They each wrote me a letter, and I still have those letters today. And they were as destructive as you think they would be. I was going to go to hell. This kid is a bastard, will never be welcome into heaven. And how dare I think that I have the tools to be a parent? My mom, felt like I was not qualified to be a mom. And so I kept them. I was going to burn them this year. Once a year I do a burn where I burn everything, but I've kept them because I think I want to remind myself from time to time where I came from. So I can understand, because here's the thing. We can't just draw lines and never try to understand other people. As hurtful as those two people have to me, they're still my parents. I still carry their DNA. And it's in my best interest to do my best to try to understand who they are and where their hearts are. They're not mean people. They're not. They're just very they're very tied to an organization. You know, I've said before, some of the groups that my parents hung out with were more like a cult than a community. They told them how to raise their kids. They told them what to wear, what to eat, what to do. And they're in that, and they can't get out of that, because that's where their self-worth and their belonging came from. So I can't speak to forgiveness. I can't speak to anything other than where I am is trying to just understand who they are as humans and understand their childhood, understand what brought them together, and the lives that they've lived. I will say my parents did a lot of good in the world as well, in the communities. They were going to make sure people were fed, as long as they were white and in a circle that they felt comfortable in. They weren't going to do that for, a group of immigrants. And, they were like, we're all God's people, but certain people just don't know Jesus Christ. And I'm like, but if they come from a country that their faith and religion, or they're Muslim or they're Buddhist or whatever, how can you not feed them because they don't believe the way you believe? But that's just that's baked in.
It'll be interesting to see how the younger, my generation, my Gen Z, Gen X, 1980, one of those, and the late baby boomers, how it's going to change as we look back, because a lot of people were raised like that. And I had a pastor here in Nashville say one time, he's like, the church has it all wrong. You feel like you have to be perfect when you walk in those doors. He's like, I want you feeling perfect when you walk out. I don't care how you walk in. And Pastor Pete's amazing. I still follow him and his journey, and he's right. Where we could do a whole podcast alone series all year on where has religion gone wrong? Where have these leaders gone wrong? They cover up that Miranda Lambert song, Mama's Broken Heart. Put that makeup on. You better cover that up. And we're in the church. And it's just sad. I grew up in a very small town, mostly Catholic. We had a beautiful, big Catholic cathedral in a town of 5,000. It was just, everybody's all churchy. And my parents, we didn't go every Sunday. My dad was an altar boy and went through Catholic school. And he's like, I don't want to put y'all through that. It's like, I want you to be these good kids. And it was funny because it was almost the opposite happened. We didn't go to church, and my parents, they were frowned upon by their peers, by their friends, and you're not in church and your kids aren't doing this. And my brother and I turned out a lot better than, and then it's like when I came out and they're like, see, they didn't go to church, but also didn't get anyone pregnant when I was 17. Well, I wonder why. But but the DUI, the drug arrest, all this stuff. And I'm not saying those kids are bad kids, and we all make mistakes, but it's like those parents were just so out there in my parents' face about us not going to church. And my parents like, you kids you do your work and it'll show off at some point. We don't need to brag on you. And really, we just kind of took the back seat, and my parents took it. And it's sad because I want to be in church. It is about community and involvement, but I come from a society of kind of like you were saying, well, help people, but not the brown ones. I like them, but I would never live down in Brownsville, Texas. And it's just sad.
And for me growing up, and you touched on this a little bit, Bonnie. I didn't know that anyone else was making mistakes. Like, everyone seemed so perfect. We didn't talk about that. So for me, I was like, God, I must be just awful because I'm doing everything wrong, everything I'm thinking about or processing,
Amen.
And so giving, especially younger people, the knowledge that everybody's broken. Everybody's showing up at church as a broken person. And when I left the religion I grew up in, I had a difficult time finding a church that fit for me, because I went to a gay one and I was like, wait a minute, it's too gay, whatever that means. I was like, that's too much for me. It's too conservative here, and this is like a production. I remember the first church I went to in Nashville. It was like, for me, it was like a Beyonce concert. It's like the lights started going. Ladies and gentlemen, service starts in 3, 2, 1.
That word from
I was like, oh my gosh, like I needed more traditional. And you got to find, something that works for you.
Right.
And the other thing, Bonnie, I think you mentioned writing the letter to your parents. And you mentioned you didn't know if that was brave or not. I've always thought that is not only brave but really smart, because it gives the person, and Wes and I've talked about this before, giving people a chance to deal with that message. We are dealing with coming out for a long time, and we expect people to be okay with it sometimes immediately. Like, I'm out. Why aren't you okay with me? But the letter is really smart and very brave, because it's not only you're coming out, but you're also giving them the opportunity. But there is that point where you're like, how long do we give them? Like, is it 5 years, 15 years? Is there a cutoff point? I think everybody's different, but finding that level of where you're like, I love what you said, like, they have good, they're still good, right? They're still good in them. And same thing, I love my parents dearly. They're not going to be marching in the pride parade with me. I don't expect that. But we've come to an understanding with our relationship, and we're humans.
Right.
Yeah. Important.
I think it's important to allow people to be who they are. But I want to say the point I'm in my life now is I'm not looking to their approval to give me my self-worth anymore. Like, that took a long time for me to get there. But the toxicity of a culture of everyone's looking to everyone else to get their validation, to me, that's what a lot of church is my father was the one standing in the pulpit, and he's got, he and God are tight, right? Because he's a man of God. That's what they used to call it. You're a man of God. So his word was law, and he wanted God's approval, and everyone else wanted my dad's approval, and they wanted each other's approval. And if someone wore a dress too colorful, that was talked about. And I'm like, as an adult, I'm like, I don't want to keep looking for other people's approval. And that
never ends.
It never ends. It never ends. And they are putting forth a lifestyle that no one can achieve. Perfection is a lie. None of us can achieve that. So once I have to say, The Gifts of Imperfection has been a Brene Brown book, has been a big part of my life. Also, the songwriting journey for me was a place for me to just be me and talk about the things I wanted to talk about. And going back to being the script writer for other people, there's a thread that kind of goes through most of the songs that are out in the world, which is, I'm not perfect. I feel invisible. How do I redeem myself? How do I forgive myself? How do I, these struggles of the humanity that we each carry has been a big struggle for me. Because I'm not going to lie. Even today, I feel like I hold myself to a very high standard in everything I do. If I don't do it 110%, I feel like I failed. And I'm gonna push this point home just a smidge. My 18-year-old is now a freshman in college, and they have done very well through school, whole life, straight A's. Get to college, it's like, oh shit, this is hard. They have cried and worried about a class all week long. I've been on the phone with them, like, just talking them through it and everything. They made an 88. And my kid is literally, I don't know what I'm going to do if I don't get an A in this class. I don't know if I can live if I don't get an A in this class. And I said, oh my God, I've passed down this idea that we can be perfect. So having a child in front of you that is kind of suffering that same perfection, looking for validation from everyone else, has really brought my attention to the forefront of, like, stop this. It's going to kill you. Yeah. It's going to make you an unuseful human on the planet if you can't allow yourself to make mistakes, make them loud, make them proud, keep moving, you know, watching every word you say. An interview like this morning, getting in my right mind of like, make sure every word is exactly what it should be, so that you're not projecting out to the world anything that's untoward or not. Why?
Yeah.
I'm coming to you today saying, I want to learn how to just be, and that the perfection part of me can just fall away. And I hope all three of us can really be on that journey together. Like, it's not about being perfect. It's about being us.
Mm-hmm.
And we get a lot of feedback. I feel like we're in Bonnie Baker's church right now, the congregation. I love this talk. I love it. But we get a lot of feedback about, we love how you guys are real and you can own it in the next episode. We're like, hey, remember last night we didn't edit that out. We're going to own it.
Right.
We made a mistake. We said something wrong, especially now with pronouns and how people identify. We're like, we want to learn, you know?
Right.
And it's okay to be. Leslie Jordan the other day, that's what made that show so great. He's like, I'm not a good singer. I'm going to make mistakes. Let's party. Like,
he was introducing the wrong people.
He'd be like, oh shit, am I singing this one too? You know,
all night. He'll be out in a minute.
And it was, and I think again with this generation, we're coming. We saw how we had to be perfect. We saw how we had to hide what, you know, what we thought we were supposed to hide. And now it's like, no, this is, if people want to talk about me, they're leaving somebody else alone. Like, I'm gonna live my life, and y'all can stay over here and do whatever on a Friday night. I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna meet amazing people and have conversations and build my life, build their life, and hopefully contribute to society somehow.
Yeah.
Bonnie, I was going to ask, just to kind of keep this moving, I want to talk some about the songs you've written. You've written some amazing music.
We're now entering hour 3.
Right.
Like, we can talk to you.
I know. I love it. Great. I find it really interesting. The writing part you mentioned, like I'd had no concept that anyone besides the artist wrote music. Honestly, I know that sounds really ignorant of me.
No, I
even
was
a few years ago, and I'm watching the documentary Invisible, and I'm like, I had no idea this was all in the backstory of this kind of stuff. So, question to you is, when you have an artist and you've written some amazing songs, when you have an artist singing your song, you see him performing. Number one, is there any part of you that's like, God, I wish I could sing that? You know, I wish I was the one performing that or putting that out there. And two, is it weird to, like, such a personal journey for you is being sung by somebody else?
You know, that's an incredible question. I can hold both of those and say this and this. You know, a few years ago, Reba did My Sister on an award show and walks out and performs a song. And I was sitting by myself at my house watching it on television. And, you know, fast forward, Hunter did Invisible on the Grammy Awards. I had rented one of the suites at a really amazing hotel downtown Nashville and invited 50 of my best friends, and we're all sitting there watching it. So there are two sides of that, in that I felt alone when Reba was doing the song. Like, it's just like lonely, because you know what the story is. The My Sister song is totally based on my sister. Those choruses of like bringing someone home drunk to go to church with us, all true. And then Invisible, having 50 people sitting there with me watching him perform the song on the Grammys, I still felt alone. I still felt I knew where that journey was that brought us to that song. Now, Hunter and I have that in common, and we have a co-writer on that. There is something very sacred about the space that co-writers share together. I remember the journey of that song. I remember how it came together. The same with My Sister. And I don't use alone in a negative sense. It's, would I like to be the one performing it? Not really. But sometimes there is something about it that I would love to be able to stand up in front of people and say, this is my story. I did live this, truly live this. Now, Reba, incredible version of my sister. And the day she did her vocals on that, she invited my co-writers and I to come to the studio with her and introduced us to her sister, who she's very close to. And it was just a very sweet moment of sitting and talking to the Reba on a couch at the studio, of like where the song came from, what it meant to us, what it meant to her. And so I'm going to draw this line. So watching someone do a song and the audience of it becomes this, whereas if I did the song, the audience would be 20 people at the listening room. And so there is a movement in me that realized early on that to have a wider audience, you have artists that reach a wider audience. Reba's going to have an audience that I will never have. Sarah Evans did a song called Tonight, which love the song, and the story of that song is just, Sean McConnell does a song called Maybe You Can Love Me Anyway. Never been a huge hit, but when he plays it live and the times I've sat in the audience with him, it's phenomenal to know where that song came from. And then to see him playing it to people, telling it as if it's his story. So there is a shared understanding. And I think my writing has helped me understand that I'm not alone in the way I experience life. Like, I'm not an alien from another place. I am human. I'm living on an earth that I have human experiences. And when I try to put those in a lyric with a melody that works, that your audience broadens and widens. And that actually feels really good to me.
Yeah, there was a TEDx talk about a singer-songwriter, and he had lost his mother, and her favorite instrument was the cello. So he had it, and he's funny, he was talking about, it was a TEDx talk about him, like, he's like, here's the song, and he would read some of the lyrics, and then he went through this whole speech about how, writing it, put it together. And when he did it at the end and incorporated the cello, people, because that was his version of his mother talking, that was her and his favorite instrument. And at the end of it, you're like, oh my, that song was totally different than when you heard it before. It's almost like three wooden crosses. Once you sit there and listen, and even with you and Hunter's song, Crowded Hallways Are the Loneliest Spaces or Places, it's like that took me back to high school when I was in the closet, or my fraternity house when I was in the closet. Speaking of an awkward time, like you're surrounded by all these men and you're like, and it was just, and that was years, it was almost a decade, 2014, I think that was out. Yeah. And that was, I graduated in 05. And I'm like, God, that takes me back. And now I know you kind of. I'm like, oh my God, that's her.
Right.
But or anyone who just dares to be different.
Right.
Is the third or fourth line in that song. Oh my God, that was powerful. And now, you're right. Once you know the art and the story behind it and the person behind it, I mean, there's a true story there.
Yeah. And the part about the music business that is a little hard for me to understand is the impact that song has had in the world. I mean, and I don't say that like lightly. I get messages from people in Brazil. I get messages from people in Australia of how that song has touched their life, or it came into my life at a time when I needed to hear it, which just really makes a writer feel good, to the way country kind of really shut down the radio airplay of that song. Like it got into the teens, but never, rose to the top 10, top 5. Once again, my perfectionism is going to like rear its ugly head. I was like, we saw a world impact, and yet country was like, we just can't quite get behind this song. Yeah. And I don't understand or know why. They actually didn't really want to get behind Hunter anymore. So he has now left the country market, so to speak, and is managed by management in LA, and is still putting out music and still doing what he does in a different world of like, we just love you and accept you exactly the way you are, which country labels just couldn't do that, which, boy, that's another 3-hour program that we could put together, is the difference in like what the world needs to hear and what country is, what Nashville is pumping out into the world. We think it's cute, when you look at the top 10 every week and it's all white male talking about a truck. And I'm like, there's more humans out there that need music than just that demographic. But because that demographic has such a hold on our music, it does not venture out of that. And, as you saw in the film, Katie Lang was not acceptable. Mm-hmm. Look at what we missed out having her in our town. There have been artists that are not acceptable. Fancy Haygood, you mentioned him earlier. Incredible voice, right? Openly gay, and just there wasn't a place for him in some of those circles in Nashville. And, we can just go down the list. My friend Shelly Wright, she's having a career. I'm out. I need to be out for my own health and mental sanity, right? She had to do that. And they were like, yep, bridge too far. We cannot have you on our label. We cannot support your music because of who you are as a person. And boy, we are missing out on some important songs and artists and producers and all of these things, because we are so narrow in our way of thinking in the Nashville music business.
Yeah. And there may not be one answer, but are they scared, or are they just pushing the truck and beer and women and boots songs because of the money? Or are they scared of, record label ABC is not going to do this because XYZ, do you see what I'm saying? Are they just scared of failing, or?
I'm not sure there's I'm not sure there's a simple, easy answer to that. I think it's multi-layered, because if you dig back through the history of country music, I mean, unless they can make somebody a renegade in a cute way, acceptable way, the man in black, because it's money, it's power, it is, I'm going to call it laziness. If you have an artist that looks different than all the other 40 artists on the top 50 that week, if you have the one artist that's a different shape, texture than all the others, you have to be creative, you have to be smart, you have to be driven, you have to have a game plan to work that into the dialogue. People want to show up to their jobs and they want it to be easy. They want to just check the boxes. They want to put out a single. They want to put out a video that looks like all the other videos that got put out, and they want it to be a hit. And then they want to go to their happy hour with their, with their corporate credit card and buy drinks for everybody, pat themselves on the back, and they've done nothing. The reason we keep getting the same artists, same songs, same things over and over again is because it's easy. Anytime you buck the system, anytime you go for the underdog, anytime you try to change the narrative of the story, it becomes harder to do. And yet I feel like right now we are called upon, and I'm telling my young songwriters, I manage 2 producers, I work with tons of artists and songwriters on a daily basis. Color the picture the way you want to color it, and I will figure out how to get it out into the world. Let me do the heavy lifting. You do you, and then we'll go from there. Now, I am 2 computers in a room by myself on the east side of town. So I do realize that I am rolling a freaking rock uphill, but I am determined for the music and the art of it to be the calling card from now on. It does not matter if you're gay or you're straight or black or white, or married, divorced 3 times, a former drug addict. I don't care what your story is. I want you to be honest. And if your art needs an audience. Let's find that audience. You can find an audience today. The music business shut down Napster because they were afraid of file sharing. Well, look where that got us. You know, it's just like I lived through those days of like, these technical guys came up with this thing. Hey, we can share files and we don't have to buy a CD. That has devastated my income. So let me just be first and foremost to say that 10 million copies of a physical product is something I'm very proud of, because I have 49 million streams on one song with Spotify that has made far less than 1 million copies of an album because of the rates and because of the money and the money pieces. So I miss physical sales, but we're never going back. Technology has brought us forward and we need to pick it up from here on out. But I'm not going to just call out the Nashville music business, but I'm going to call them out first. They get scared because it's not easy. We don't want to have to rethink. We don't have to want to redo. We've always done it this way. This is the way. This is the plan. Let's do this. Never change the plan. You've got to change and tailor make the business to the music and the art, and not just the gatekeepers on the audience side. So we have about 15 gatekeepers for all of terrestrial radio. Those are the 15 white men that people want to make happy. Mm-hmm. I'm wanting to turn gatekeepers into ushers who open the door and invite people in to share their music. Whoever you are, wherever you are, I get music from people at Yale that write jazz. I get people from, London who are, in the School of Music there, ICMP, that are writing kind of indie pop, whatever. If it's good music and good art, I believe it deserves an audience. And that's where I am with this, is like, it's time to widen the picture, widen the window, open the doors, everybody come in, everybody make the music that you're called to make.
Do you think TJ Osborne's going to help with that, with him coming out earlier this year?
I, was part of an article that was in Washington Post about that situation. TJ's a friend, and, those of us that have known him for all these years, we knew, but it wasn't our place to say. The amount of love he has received, I feel like, and I can't speak for him, but I feel like he's received a lot of support. But I want to be very clear, he has received a lot of private messages of support. He has not received a lot of out in the public support by many artists. I think our trusted Maren Morris, Taylor Swift, one or two artists, but the rest of the artists have been absolutely silent. That's the heartbreaking part of this to me, is that every artist didn't stand up with him and say, yep, he's our guy. We love him no matter what.
Good point.
So a lot of people supported him. A lot of publishers, managers, agents, label people supported him, but it was a private message on his phone. I'm ready for those people to put that message out in the world.
Yeah. And Nashville, and again, it depends on someone's perception of Nashville. They may think it's, 1970s George Jones, but when you come here and Cracker Barrel is at Pride, Dollar General is at Pride, Bridgestone America is at Pride.
Right.
We see this in Nashville, and then all of a sudden you get to Music Row and you're like, hello,
right.
Where you at? Where you at?
Right.
Even with something like this, we went to Brothers Osborne at Ascend Amphitheater. And there was every mix of race. You had Wranglers, you had rainbow flags, everything. And when his brother stepped back and TJ had the spotlight, literally one spotlight on him, the band was playing in the background and he gave a thank you speech. And I still have chills. Everybody was up, from the Wranglers to the Rainbows. And it was so amazing. I think that seats 5,000, 6,000. And there wasn't a dry eye. And that was just a couple months ago. So it was about 8 months after he came out. So he said, thank you to the city and thank you to this. But you're right. There's a lot of people that haven't really said anything.
Because people, I don't know if the general public, if they're accepting him. They love his music all the way from Rainbows to Wranglers. I love that. It's like we aren't as divided as we want to believe we are. And there is a small percentage of people over here and over here, like, you guys hate each other, fight each other, get a gun and kill each other. No, you can wear a rainbow. You can wear Wranglers. You can vote conservative. You can vote liberal. We're all in this thing together, because when we fall in love, when we break our hearts, when we lose a parent, when we lose a job, it all hurts the same. Like, all of it is the same. And so I do think, I will say, I'm very proud of him. I am happy for the family support he has. He was not raised in the South, so I think that has a little something to do with it. You know, do I wish that this had happened along with Shelley Wright and some of the others, the Ty Herndons and things like that, so that we could keep those people in our, you know, Shelley made a choice to, like, I'm going to leave and go create this amazing career somewhere else. And kudos to her for that. She is one of the most brilliant, brave women I've ever met in my life. And so I'm proud of the work she's doing. But TJ stayed here and is doing the work. And I do think if you look at a lot of our younger artists, Katie Pruitt's, and, you know, I'll go through the list, but we've got some, Brooke Eden. Brooke Eden is openly gay, and, you know, Fancy, we've got young ones coming up, and I'm really hoping to see their career grow to the magnitude of a Garth Brooks or a Brooks and Dunn or Reba, because we're going to have some of them come through. The bottom line is the percentage of the population that, you know, are gay, it's not 50%. I mean, we're talking what, 14 to 17% of our population identifies on the LGBTQ plus spectrum, right? And my kids said something to me the other day. They said, my age, 18-year-olds, we want our sexuality and we want our music to be fluid. We're tired of boxes. We're tired of having to say we're non-binary, we're lesbian, we're queer, we're this. We're just people playing music, having music heard in an audience. And so I really think the divisions maybe can go. I love identifying. I love us being aware of who we are as humans, you know, and for me to even say the word lesbian a few years ago kind of made me a little uneasy. I love a woman. I'm married to a woman. In fact, our last mayor of our city married us in her living room on a beautiful, you know, New Year's Eve day. We got married on New Year's Eve, and she married us, and it was an incredible thing. And she's Jewish, and I love that. We have this amazing household of all different brands and kinds of beliefs, and you know, the learning to understand each other and see things from someone else's point of view, I think is going to be a healing thing that we need seriously to happen right now, not tomorrow, right now. We need to start to see each other as just human beings. If you're Muslim, you're welcome. If you are atheist, you're welcome. If you love country music, you're welcome. If you love jazz, you're welcome. Like, you are welcome into the community of whatever we are as humans. And I just feel like the divisions have to be just opened up, and that we're not just carrying those little placards around, you know, hello, I'm a lesbian, so put me in one category, you know? So yes, I think TJ Osborne has had a big effect on where we are.
Very cool.
I think you do need to start a church, Bonnie. Like this.
Yeah. I'll be there.
I absolutely love what you're saying. I wish we could talk to you all day. Can we do another episode with you? I'm just going to ask this right now because I've got so much that I want to talk to you about. I so appreciate your time. I wanted to get into some other stuff about the movie, but I would love to. Do we have time?
I can keep going. I've got a little time, but I realize that I take up a lot of time. So.
That's okay.
No.
Ed, I'm sorry. I was sitting here. So Ed Ishmael, right?
Yes.
I was on the AGLCC, the Austin Gay and Lesbian Chamber of Commerce. I know Ed Ishmael.
Are you serious?
No, I'm sitting here this whole time. I listened to everything you said, but I'm like, that name. Yes, Ed. I have to send him a message and be like, that's a small world. That just debunked a myth of all gay people know each other.
Right.
I'm like, no, we don't. Oh, Ed.
Yes, we do.
I'm not joking. Ed is the sweetest guy. His office was on Lamar over there in Austin, and him, Doug Plummer, all those people in Austin. Oh my God.
Ed is
world.
This
right?
is why
I called him Eddie, but Edward is. But Ed Ishmael is his professional name. But
we did a lot of luncheons together.
I adore that guy, and yes, he's been very active in the Austin scene, and I love that for him. Yeah,
look up to him a lot. He was definitely a leader. So
Bonnie, I want to tell you the song "Dry County." I've told you this when I talked to you before. I don't know why I connect with this song so much because what it talks about, I don't necessarily connect with, but it just moved me so much. I have listened to it so many times, and I'm really interested to kind of know the backstory behind that. And is it a truly personal song about with you or about something family experience? I'd like to know more about that because I'm kind of obsessed with this song.
I appreciate that so much. I wrote that song alone, which, I moved here in 92. So I'm getting close to my 30th year here. And my whole career has been co-writing. And I am only sitting here in front of you today because of the brilliance of my co-writers. And so TJ and Bill asked me to sit for the first interview when they first started. They had already interviewed Mary Gaucher and Kai Fleming, and then they asked if they could interview me. And so we sat down. This was early on. And I had never talked about being gay in Nashville. People knew it. When I had a kid, I got some really awkward, weird conversations with publishers and stuff like, we're okay with you being gay, but let's don't talk about your kid, right? There was just some really hard moments in my career as a songwriter. So TJ is asking me these questions on camera. And I literally, in the middle of a sentence, felt this crack happen where I realized I had never dealt with being gay in Nashville. So I stopped the interview and I said, guys, I can't do this. I'm going to fall apart. And so I literally was at a function later that day and a friend of mine walked in and she just had a light about her. And I was like, what's going on with you? And she's like, well, just went through the worst year of my life. And I have a new therapist and she has changed my life. She deals with childhood trauma. I made her go get a pen and she wrote her number on my hand. And so I called that therapist. I walked outside and called and made an appointment. And I started therapy to deal with childhood trauma. And she was amazing. So I went through about a year of therapy, intense, like getting into the cracks and crevices of what it meant to grow up female and gay in the world that I grew up in. And started like this amazing healing journey. My wife is a therapist, so that also kind of lined up with where she was. I was once again dealing with kind of some addiction issues again. And I was like, I am going to really mess up my life again, because I've done that a few times, if I don't get myself healthy. So therapy's going on. 2019, we start going into 2019. Just a lot of changes in my life. And I invited TJ, the director, and Bill to a little function I had at Douglas Corner, which was helping young songwriters, producers, engineers, that kind of thing, to have an audience for free. Like, I got someone to sponsor it. And so once a month. And so they came to this little show called What's Next. And I said to TJ, I was like, I've been writing a little bit about that first interview. And I had some bones of the song, but didn't really have it clearly set out. And so TJ was very sweet and kind, as was Bill. Bill's known me since I moved here. Like, I've known Bill Brim forever. And they were just very supportive and kind. And so I kind of started going back to having some writing time on my own, and kind of just putting some thoughts and feels on the paper. I really didn't think it was very good. I was like, this is just a good way for me to express myself and what I'm feeling. You know, does anyone hear me scream? I'm doing it under my breath, you know, trying so hard to keep my hands clean, you know, wearing my Sunday dress, you know, but there's a rip and there's a tear, there's a stain, and I'm scared because sober don't go for unholy. They just don't accept it. And then drowning in a dry county. It's like, I grew up in a county that was dry, and yet we were all just underwater. We just weren't real with each other. And so I worked on that song for probably a year. I did a little version in my little studio here, just me and piano and that kind of thing. And I sent it to TJ, and I was like, just so you know, this is where I am. And I sent him the song, and I said, I have gone through almost a year of therapy. This is what I've been doing. And here's the song that I've come up with. And so he got in touch with me again and said, hey, please don't hang up on me. But would you sit down and have another conversation with us? And so literally year and a half later, we sat down and had the rest of the conversation about the film and being gay. And because when I was in this kind of unhealthy, stuck place, all it did was come out angry. Like, I was just angry all the time, you know, and I just don't think that anger gets me anywhere. It paints everything with such a brush of like non-acceptance and that. So I'm asking people to be acceptable of me, and yet I'm going out into the world, this, you know, just brutal conversation. Yeah, everything's a fight. Everything's a fight. And I have to say, I'm a better parent. I am a better wife. I'm a better teacher. I'm a better songwriter because of the experience of the film Invisible, because the experience of Dry County, going through that process, and because of the putting out of this film. Man, it's just been one of the most healing processes I could have done. And I did not know that when I started. I thought it was just a little film, you know, that you're going to sit and talk about, you know, just like a conversation. And then it became a conversation that literally changed my life.
Yeah. I still remember the quote, and I'm paraphrasing you here, Bonnie, where you talked about, and you mentioned this earlier when we first started, how important it is to sit in the uncomfortableness of something. And that's where you need to sit for a while, because that's kind of where you start to grow. And I think that's the one quote that I took from that movie was, or from that documentary, was that it's okay to sit in uncomfortableness. You want to even put yourself in those uncomfortable moments, because if you keep avoiding them, I mean, it's what we did. It's what I did growing up with religious stuff. I just pushed it down further. Didn't want to deal with it. Or you rebel against it. You know, you don't want to have anything to do with it. But sitting in those uncomfortable moments, goodness, for you, it got you this amazing song, and obviously got you through some therapy. And so I think that's awesome.
Thank you so much. And I'm so proud of the whole group of people. You've talked to some of the people from the film. I know you interviewed TJ, and it literally is a labor of love. And I know those guys have worked so hard, Bill and TJ both. And, you know, Kai Fleming, Shelley Wright, Mary Gaucher, Jess, on and on, Diane, all of them have, Sid, all of them have become like family, you know? And I was like, boy, who knew that out of this film was going to be, you know, come this group of people that were kind of the misfits that were, you know, in different places in life. And then all of a sudden to have this kind of focused event in front of us. So I think the movie is well done. I hope everyone can see it. Proud of the work. And I was super scared of the song coming out, because I was like, I don't know if it's good or not, but the thing I had to say is it's honest. It's just honest. It may not be good art. It may be, you know, the slack that I cut everyone else, I needed to cut myself. It's like good art, bad art. It's just art, and there is no right or wrong. Could it be better? I don't know. You know, I always listen to every song. I still listen to, you know, every song I've ever had out on the radio. And I'm like, oh my God, I wish we would have said this, you know, still picking it apart. But I appreciate the Dry County has just been an incredible moment for me to, you know, I'm not the best singer in the world. I'm not the best piano player in the world. None of those things. And yet I could sit down and just say, this is who I am. You know, this is my story.
Right. And we don't have to be perfect. I thought in the film with Marianne Kennedy and Pam Rose behind you.
Oh gosh.
And as a fan, I'm like, oh, all these ladies knew each other. They just got together, did a film. It took about 4 hours. And it took, there was a lot of people that didn't want to do the film. There's a lot of people that their manager said, you're not going to be in that film because of your career. So the guts and the courage for y'all to do this over a few years span and put it together. And then me, I'm like, oh, they just did that last weekend. Put it out. I'm like, it's kind of like you're peeling back those layers of a song, but now it's a film. But that, when y'all were in that studio, it's on Music Row. It used to be an old church, right?
Yes, it's Ocean Way, which is a studio that's owned by the Mike Kerb School of Music.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, Mike Kerb bought that studio, and it is run under the music department at Belmont. But yeah, it's an incredible studio, and it was an old church. And I, you know, TJ's vision of that being where the song was performed with, you know, Kennedy Rose were definitely part of the influences in my life and my writing life before I moved to Nashville. And so to have them sitting there, and then Larissa Maestro is an incredible cello player. Yep. You know, it was an incredible day, I have to tell you. Yeah.
Well, I was telling Bonnie when I first talked to her, this is how my mind works. Every time I listen to it, I envision like the award show that it's on, and she's performing it as a piano. There's a massive choir behind her. Like every time I hear it, I get chills. I'm like, I want this. I want people to hear this because it is. And I don't know anything about songwriting. I just appreciate music, but I can just hear pain. But it's like pain with an overlaying of like acceptance, and I don't know. It's weird. It's like it's not a sad song.
Yeah,
it's like this is kind of what I've been through, and I'm putting it out there for you. So
I appreciate that, and I think the two lines that get me every time is like, you know, we're all sisters and brothers, and don't forget about the others. Because as the oldest sibling in my family, I just always felt this sense of responsibility to build the bridge and build the ladder to get people into this place of acceptance. You know, my middle sister, boy, just went through some awful times with my parents, and then she had a kid, and they went through some awful times, and all of it came from this place of like, you're not good enough, you're not perfect, you're this and you're this, and it just oozes out into all of this dysfunction. And you know, for me to just keep having those conversations with my sister, who I love dearly, and to watch the pain she went through. So the whole song is me saying, this is where I've been, but the biggest thing is don't forget about all the other people that are going through the same thing. And that's why I want this film to be seen, whether someone is a junior in high school or whether they're 85 years old and they never came out, wherever you are in life, I want you to know you're not alone. You are not alone in the struggles you're going through, no matter what those struggles are. Because if we don't get real with each other, we never get healed with each other. We never get, on the same place of like loving each other unconditionally. And that's what we're wanting. The opposite of addiction is not sobriety, it's connectedness. It is being connected to a community. It was not until I answered that for myself that I understood how to keep my addictions and my depression and my self-harm away from me was not to be sober only, not to be religious only, but to be connected, to be in touch with other human beings that understand where I'm coming from, and I understand where they're coming from. That's when we get to a healthier, more balanced place.
I feel like I should have been writing all of her quotes down.
Yeah, I just got like 3 tattoo ideas out of that.
I know. I was like, check. I'm going to start quoting this thing.
It's recorded. We can go back.
I know. Wow.
You guys are great. I love that. That's so sweet. I spent a couple of hours speaking with some people in London. I'm going to go to London next summer and do some teaching at some universities and in the schools, because the idea that creators and writers and artists have to have addictions, they have to be, if you look at our classic, writers of our world in the US, so many of them died young of addictions, of self-harm. If you look at our classic novels and how many of those people killed themselves, and then we have young people who want to be writers and artists and creators and creative, and they feel like that demonic hold of your life of addictions has to be there to be brilliant. Here's the message. You are a genius despite your addictions, not because of them. So that's the message I have out in the world. You do not have to be dark and brooding and angry and, cutting yourself and drinking yourself good night every night of the world to be a genius. You are a genius because everyone has the ability and the creativity that wants to be out in the world and open. You find someone that is miserable and sad and lonely, it's because they wanted to be a painter and they became an accountant instead because they needed a real job. It's like, just allow people to do what they want to do, what their highest and best calling is. If you want a fish to climb a tree, he's going to go through his whole life feeling like he's a loser and that he's not. So get in the lane you were chosen to be in and work and produce and put out whatever it is. It's a painting. It's a piece of pottery. It's making clothing. I love good, well-made clothing, and I go to a tailor who makes well-made clothing, and that is his art. He loves it more than anything in the world. Just like me writing a song makes me happier than anything in the world. And if everyone finds what that is, they don't need to pick up a bottle. They don't need to pick up a gun. They don't need to pick up a Bible. They don't need to pick up a weapon because they are absolutely in the perfect place that they're supposed to be in.
Bonnie, I want to put that on your the speech CD that you have, the 50 speeches. Can we just add that one to 51? I love that.
I'm quitting my job Monday.
I know. I'm so inspired right now.
Wow. Oh, well, I'm in property management, so that's my drinking struggle is. And it's funny, Bonnie, because I've started to address, I don't know how many days I haven't had liquor, but it's funny because
60
it's, I'm a 75-day challenge. And it's gone well so far, but in the beginning, I'm like, oh, it was easy, but it was like 3 weeks in. But now it's funny because we'd always make road sodies and we'd put them in Starbucks cups. So everybody's like, sure. It's coffee. Because I would always have liquor in them,
Right.
And but I've had the most feedback out of any post, and I'm not an influencer. I don't have a lot of followers, but there were so many people, and it's the private messages of my niece is in rehab or my thing. But when you said, I wrote it down, it's not about sobriety, it's about community and connectedness. It is. It's a lifelong journey. I've had friends in AA for 30 something years, and they go to the big conventions and speak, and they're a part of that community because they never want to stop. They want to keep helping people, and it's also for them too.
Right.
So that kind of hit home.
And I want to put a pin on the end of that and say, I am not anti, anything like celebration and healthy living and that kind of thing. I mean, drink, smoke a little weed, do whatever, makes you feel good. It is the darkness of where I came from. The alcohol was what could keep me there and make me okay. And I have one thing to say is I have asked the universe. I've never received an award sober. And I'm asking for one last award that I can stand on a stage sober and in my right mind and thank all of the things that I have been given in a moment of sobriety. It's not about not drinking. It's about not being healthy. And so I applaud your efforts. I don't think people are bad that drink. For me, alcohol was just a tool of self-hatred. It was a tool of self-hatred. If I had driven off a cliff while I was drinking, which I almost did many times, I've had DUI, I've had many, many run-ins with the law and with the rules because I broke those rules. I woke up face down in my yard in Austin many times with the sprinklers going off. It's not the alcohol. It's the unhappiness and unhealthiness within that drives me to that place. So once I get those things figured out, then I can say to people, it's not about having a drink. It's not about that. I don't want it to be like, this is a teetotaler kind of movement. No, it's not. It is, I want to get healthy. I want to be safe. I want to be productive. I want to be a human on the planet that is building bridges and ladders for people and gathering together people of like-mindedness in a very sober way, because that's what I need for me. And it's not a message of like, oh, you're bad if you do this. But I do think us all taking a step back sometimes and asking ourselves, why are we doing this? What's the why? And then that will inform you. And if it's to celebrate, break open the champagne. Have it.
Some Brandy Carlisle wine.
Oh, yeah.
XO winery out of
which I adore Brandy Carlisle. I've been following her since early days and seen the shows at Belcourt, and man, I love the influence she's having on our town and on our music.
She's incredible. She's another one I saw at the Ryman for the first time I'd ever seen her, and I was at that point. Anybody I see at the Ryman, I'm obsessed with. It's just such an amazing place.
It's a magical place. It truly is. Every show I've seen there has been just magical.
Well, goodness,
Bonnie
solved all the world's problems.
I know. I
thank you for having me.
Well, first of all, everybody needs to go see Invisible. Figure out a way to do it. You're all grown. You know how to, look it up. Google it. I don't care. And go, especially go listen to Dry County. Listen to it 50 times, because every single time you listen to it, you're going to hear a line that speaks to you or makes you think of something. It's amazing.
Oh, yeah.
So, Bonnie, and I know I speak for Wes too. We're so grateful for you and for all the things you've said. I feel like I've learned a lot. I wish I could. I'm going to go back and write down all the quotes. And post them. Yes. Is there anything before we finish up? Is there anything you want to plug or anything you want to finish with?
No, I just want to say that bkermusic.com. So that's kind of the logo we have, bkermusic.com. You can go there, sign up if you want to do songwriting workshops. I teach at MTSU. in the commercial songwriting department. I am part of the American Songwriter Magazine family, part of the NSAI family, which is our organization for young songwriters. ASCAP, I do a lot of work with them. I'm going to be in London next June working with ICMP, which is the it's the music school. They have a master's program for songwriting. I'll be at a couple of the universities there. I speak anywhere and everywhere that people want to talk about creativity and healthy living, balance, journey, life, career. Success is not an A to B. It is an all over the place. Success is just getting up every day, doing your best work, ending your day knowing you did your best work. If you're going to a job that you hate, go and do the very best job you can do and open yourself up to what that job is going to lead you to. I think both of you are incredibly funny, and I hope that you continue to do your stand-up and continue to do your podcast. You never know where this podcast is going to take you guys. And so sometimes those jobs, I've painted houses and I've managed restaurants and I've, done childcare. I've done everything in the world for 30 years trying to just support my music habit. And so in the years that I've been able to support myself as a songwriter, I'm grateful for that. And so just get in touch with me, write me a letter through the website. You get in touch with me, get yourself on a mailing list. I try to send out, little thoughts every once in a while. Like if you're struggling this Monday, let's try this today or whatever. Oh, yeah. So I try to just have an open forum for everyone. I do what I call songwriting intensives, where people come in and they write songs and we give feedback together and that kind of thing. So it's about being a songwriter, but it's more than that. It is about being connected to other people. I've always been a little afraid of other people, and I want to learn how to just be open and get to know all of the people in the world. Like, let's just help each other get through this thing, because we're at a crossroads. We're at a crossroads. And, the rage that I feel some days, and I told y'all I was going to be raging today. So we're going to have to solve that. We have to solve that for our kids. We have to solve that for our children. And so I think that creativity, whether it's songwriting, painting, telling a joke, the creative part of us is what's going to save us. And I just want to have that message out in the world. I really do. I love people and I want to see them do well. So thank you for the day. I really appreciate it.
Well, we really appreciate it. If you need anybody to go to London with you,
You'll come with?
I'll come with. I'll carry your luggage, whatever you need.
I've got that down.
Is that not London? It's a little bit.
It could be. I've been to London, Kentucky.
Oh, close.
I have. There's a London, Kentucky.
There is.
Yeah.
It's funny. I was looking up Airbnbs in London and realized I was in London, Kentucky. I was like, oh, wait a minute.
It's only a 3-hour drive.
Right. I was like, who knew the ocean was between here and there? But yeah, I'll have you come along. That'd be great. I'd love it.
All right. Well, Bonnie, thank you again. We love you. I can't thank you enough for all of this.
Wes, Phillip, thank you so much. And I want to say shout out to the producer, because he is doing an incredible job. So thank you for that as well.
Trent, he's back there.
Trent.
All right. Well,
I'll talk to you soon.
All right. Thank you, Wes. This has been great. I love you.
I love you, buddy.
All right. Bye, guys.
Bye, guys. Talk to you soon.
Bye.